Bula Vinaka, and welcome to everyone here from the AIS countries. It is a great pleasure to be your moderator to our webinar on South Pacific digitization, a vital key to digital transformation. As you may have read on Wikipedia, digital transformation is defined as the adoption of digital technology by a company to improve business process, value, and innovation. Today, we are going to have two exciting panel speakers who will take you through what's happening here in our islands. And we are also going to be having a knowledge sharing session as well on what they bring as experts. I know that today's topic may bring up a number of questions from you, and I want you to know that I will address as many as I can in the time that we have here today. Just a few housekeeping rules. There will be a Google form that's shared by the AIS team, and I'll be grateful if you can fill that in for the session. And also, we will start with the introductions. It is a great honor for me to introduce Delsi Benella, an inspiring Pacific woman leader in the ICT industry. So I'll hand it over to her to speak her story. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina. And first of all, I thank the Archipelagic and Island State Forum Secretariat and its organizers for inviting me to be part of this important webinar. And thank you too to you listeners that you are also participating and listening to my presentation. I would like to start off by saying transformation is not a new thing in life. We have been through changes in all stages of our lives, both physically and emotionally, either from good to bad, or best or worst to best, or vice versa. So to be digitally transformed is more or less adding another element to who we are today. At this time, we are sort of playing with the illusions, something that we never thought of, but it's reality. And it's real in our environment. For example, how could my 86-year-old father accept that if he pressed a single button of his smartphone, it will take him to watch live soccer in Brazil? Logically, he knows soccer fans would travel to Brazil by plane and watch the game. So to push our brothers and sisters in the rural communities to accept visual activities as reality is a bit too much for them to absorb without giving and guiding their understanding on basic digital knowledge. However, the interesting fact that one must learn when trying to get people to transform is to understand their priority needs and the top challenges that a respective community in the region is facing. In this way, it will contribute to fast track what is evidently to be the issue that digital activities will contribute to address. At the same time, it will incentivize the service providers to expand their service targets and expect something in return with a clear mind that this network must be maintained. In doing so, there are a lot of efforts and time required from every one of us in one way or the other to assist and contribute on. From experiences, as shown in my presentation, the 5 common issues that have contributed to slow progress of rollout of access include, as you have seen on the screen, full understanding of realities and priority needs in respective communities, that is across the region. The service providers and other players in digital sector require updated and approved national directions on development of digital services that will address the community priority needs being identified. The players will always want certainty and support from both the government and the communities because they are taking a risk in their business operations to provide access to citizens who do not understand other uses of network apart from just making calls, or may have fair understanding or knowledge, but no required important infrastructure to provide a service that they are in need. For example, the health or the education platform. Players and the responsible government institution must have a full understanding of the governance structure in respective communities and its link to the national governance framework. At the national level, a fit-for-purpose regulatory framework is very important. It promotes e-commerce activities and online businesses, and most importantly, that safeguards consumers in this digital world. Economically, how much positive impact these digital services will contribute to each person's life journey if the access is provided. For example, if the communities are experiencing negative impact from social media abuses and other forms, surely the community leaders will have second thought to freely transform. The people in respective communities will want some form of assurance from all stakeholders involved because it is a new element that have come to be instilled in their normal daily operations. So therefore, depending on the angle of where you see and understand what digital transformation is, it is not something you expect would automatically comes in as part of each individual's life. It is something you must learn how to grow with and accept as part of life in order to effectively make the most out of it. And importantly, that will have a positive impact to the communities that we want them to have access to. Next slide, please. In Vanuatu, the major issues that is hindering the uptake of internet, its digital services, is related to digital illiteracy, quality connectivity to data network, and also cost of internet services. So if you look at the slide, the diagram shows network of digital activities currently existed in digital operations, especially in urban areas of Vanuatu. Citizens in the urban areas are enjoying multimedia platforms, radio and television broadcasting, both online and analog. Internet access across majority of the islands of Vanuatu through 4G network. Discussions about cybercrime activities and data privacy. Cars, over-the-top services, including WhatsApp, G-Talk, and many more others. Sale of home cleaning, and so forth. However, if you go to rural communities with access to 4G network, all they know is Facebook and making calls. What does that tell? Although Vanuatu embraces machine learning, are we fully prepared and mindful of the loss of our precious values? These are some of the things that we think about when talking about development. Are we actually addressing our priority needs? How about our regulatory frameworks? This is where the real concern is in the digital transformation. Next slide, please. So 2 weeks ago, Vanuatu had its first e-commerce symposium, and it was successful in the sense that participants come to realize the importance of e-governance and also e-businesses. The good news is that everyone is excited to move to the next level of business operations. The bad news is that the regulatory framework is still promoting mobile voice services and not data. So although Vanuatu has had its cybercrime legislation approved 2 weeks ago, citizens in the remote areas, they still need to understand more what it means to them and their life and the utilization of internet. From this slide presentation, as you can see, you will notice the oval circle right at the bottom that indicates where Vanuatu is with its regulatory framework, mainly in generation 3. So many of our small island states today are still in generation 1, generation 2, generation 3, or even hybrid of all. But to boost digital transformation, the regulatory framework that is workable and suits every levels of users must be in generation 5 or 4 as a starter, or the hybrid of the two. Next slide, please. So going forward, in order for the digital transformation to happen, as we expect, we must consider the following realities, and it's very important. First of all, user training and capacity building in rural communities that the access is targeting is priority to address. The service integration is another matter for players to address. The security of infrastructure, including the citizens, is also important. Management for digital transformation is e-public services, a strategy, and the rollout of service is very important. I'm sorry about that. And can you hear me?
Welcome back. Yes, we can hear you.
And finally, for the services to drive access learning from the existing experience is also a priority agenda for all players. With all of that, I thank you for your time, and I'm sorry for the network hindrance. Thank you.
Thank you, Delsi, for a very informative and fantastic progress update of what's happening in Vanuatu. I believe that these points are something that we all take to heart, and it has really given us thought-provoking things to take on. On that note, I would like to remind everyone that in the chat, there is a link that's been shared for the Google Forms, as I direct everyone to our next speaker, who is going to take on what Vanuatu has spoken about and give an infrastructure spin to it. So we will welcome Mohammed Dinesh from Singapore, and he'll introduce himself.
Thank you, Georgina. Thank you, Delsi. Hi, everyone. I'm Dinesh. I am the co-founder and CTO at Transcelestial Technologies. At Transcelestial Technologies, we're trying to build the network infrastructure for the future of humanity. And I have a few slides today that I would like to share with everyone. Georgina, can I share my screen?
I think you can, yes.
Yes, okay. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I have a few slides prepared on how we plan to build our future long-term communication needs. And I will quickly take everyone through that. And later, if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to discuss. And Delsi's presentation was a perfect introduction to what I will be sharing today. She highlighted all the issues that we're facing today and some of the solutions. And I would like to touch on a small element that we can fix when it comes to digital transformation, and that's building the connectivity infrastructure. So currently, based on the latest statistics from the ITU, there are nearly 3 to 4 billion people in the world which do not have access to good internet connectivity. And the moment we hear this kind of statistics, the natural question is why? If we look a little bit deeper into how currently the world's internet connectivity is distributed, we notice that more than 99% of the world's data is traveling through undersea cables. In this picture here, you can see some of these fiber optic cables that are connecting the world to each other. These fiber optic cables do a very good job at connecting countries to other countries. However, the moment these fiber optic cables arrive inside a country, distributing them inside the country itself is quite difficult and complicated. For example, if we look at a country like the United States, you can see here all of the locations where you have the color yellow are locations where there is no access or very limited access to the internet. You can see on the map above as well that getting the fiber optic cable and spreading it across landed geographies is quite difficult and complicated. On the other side of the slides, you can also see another country like Indonesia, which has multiple islands around it. And to enable to connect every single island and every single city in these countries to internet through fiber optic cables is a very expensive and difficult thing to do. So this is one of the main layers of difficulty when it comes to connecting a lot of people to good, high quality internet. Getting them, every city, every little town, every island connected to a fiber optic cable. So at Transcelestial, we want to change this. We want to improve the connectivity experience of at least 1 billion people around the world. We believe connectivity is a human right, and we are relentlessly developing innovative, world-changing technology to deliver the best connectivity experience possible. As I mentioned, one of the biggest issues that is making it difficult now in the world to get everyone connected to the internet is the fact that laying fiber optic cables is very slow and expensive. Our solution to this problem is to use a new kind of technology where we combine the high speed of fiber optic cables with the flexibility of wireless communication technology. And that's what we are calling here wireless fiber optics. And that is basically taking the laser and the light from inside a fiber optic cable and bringing it outside and using the laser directly in air to send and receive information. We believe this is one of the highest bandwidth solutions that you can provide with our current knowledge of the technology. It's one of the technologies which has the lowest cost per bit and has the fastest time to deploy in the market. So, having said that, I would like to demonstrate how we can use laser communication-based technologies to help solve the distribution issue that we have with connectivity today. As I mentioned before, one of the biggest problems that we have when it comes to connectivity is that a lot of cities inside countries or a lot of islands do not have fiber optic cables going directly inside them. Once you go inside the cities themselves, you have another layer to the problem, and that layer is getting connectivity to every single household. According to the latest statistics from the ITU, there are nearly 2 billion people in the world who live within a 10-kilometer distance of a single fiber optic cable. And this problem is called the last mile connectivity problem. And I would like to share a little bit with you how we're looking at solving the last mile connectivity problem. If we look at how things have been happening in the last few months in the world, we notice that COVID has taken a lot of people back to their homes. This has had a huge impact on the way that we need connectivity in our day-to-day lives. More than any time before, there is a need to have high bandwidth connectivity coming to everyone's homes. However, having mentioned the issue that we have with connectivity, we can see in different places of the world how we have buildings and structures inside cities where it's very difficult to bring connectivity to every single point. As you can see here, for example, on the left side, you have a city where buildings are arranged in a very pre-planned manner, and it may be easier to bring connectivity to every single point. However, on the right side, you can see how you have a spontaneous city growth. Imagine planning to bring fiber optic cables to every single one of these cities in your area. It's a very difficult thing to do. And that's why we came up with our first product, which we call the Centauri. The Centauri is a laser communication device that can connect any 2 points within a 3-kilometer distance to a data rate as high as 10 gigabits per second. It's extremely small. It's the size of a shoebox, and it weighs less than 3 kilograms in weight. It uses around 20 watts of energy, which is similar to what you would have in a light bulb. So it's easy to power with a solar panel. And it's very fast and easy to deploy, something that can be done within a day of time. If you compare how that works in comparison to our traditional communication technologies, for example, laying down a fiber optic cable, you can see it's orders of magnitudes both faster and lower in cost to get connectivity up using a technology like this. And here you can see a simple demonstration on how easy it is to mount and deploy a Centauri device between 2 points. You basically take the device and you mount it on a simple pole and point it to the other side where you want to have the connectivity being set up. We have a simple app that can run on your phone, and on that app, you can basically use that to align the device as well, and it's very easy and user-friendly to do. It requires minimum training as well. So this is our solution to the last mile connectivity problem. Now, the natural question that comes up next is, what if someone is living at a distance that's much more than 3 kilometers? Let's say, for example, we are living on an island, which is easily maybe 50 kilometers away from the closest fiber optic cable. What is the solution there? That is where we have the second layer of our technology that we're building, and that is basically using lasers with lasers in a network that's running inside space using constellation of satellites to bring connectivity to each point. And I'll quickly introduce you guys to that concept as well. So at Transcelestial, we are planning to build a global constellation of satellites with around 700 microsatellites, which are in the lower Earth orbit. These satellites will blanket the planet and will all be connected using laser beams to each other and to any point on the ground. The basic elements of this network will look something like this. You would have optical ground stations in different locations on the ground, where basically they are simply like optical telescopes that send and receive the laser beam. These optical ground stations will be sending the data to a spacecraft, which is the satellite inside the constellation. The data from those satellites will be relayed from one satellite to another satellite using the laser beam as well, and will be finally downloaded onto another optical ground station in the second location on the ground. And this is how we establish point-to-point high bandwidth connectivity between any locations on the ground. With this kind of solution, you will be able to connect any location on the planet anytime. We will no longer be limited by geography, and this connectivity can happen in any place on the land, on sea, or in air. So a natural question that may arise is, what is the difference between this kind of connectivity solution versus traditional satellite connectivity? Traditional satellite connectivity use RF and microwave technology. With RF and microwave technology, usually the sizes of the terminals and antennas that are needed on the ground are very large. They are quite heavy and very power hungry. Most importantly, they have very limited data rates. In most cases, data rates are limited to a few megabits per second to a few hundreds of megabits per second. Because of this limited data rate and the large size of the infrastructure needed to get this satellite connectivity, the cost per bit is extremely high, making it an uneconomical solution for many people around the world. If you compare that with a laser system that we are proposing here, the size and weight and power usage of the device is much lower. And at the same time, you can have over 100 times more data rates on a laser communication system. In result, we have a solution which is much more scalable and comes at a much lower price point for commercial use cases and everyday use cases, and brings that connectivity to the masses. In this slide, I would want to just show an example of how a laser-enabled connectivity would work for any location. On the left side, you can see a building, and this building we're assuming is a location where we want to bring connectivity to. It could be an island, it could be a small town or a village, anywhere in the world which does not have access to a fiber optic cable. What we do on that building is that we install one of our laser terminals on the rooftop of that building. And from that laser terminal, we would have a optical laser link connecting that rooftop to the closest satellite, which is traveling above that location. That satellite, through a laser communication link, will connect to multiple other satellites that would eventually go on top of a data center where we have an internet exchange. And from there, we'll be able to relay the data down to another ground station, which is positioned and co-located with that data center. And this is how we can connect any location on the planet to the internet infrastructure and give them access to the latest in cloud connectivity and compute services which are available. Just to give you a few numbers as examples, if we establish a 10 gigabit per second link to any location, when that link is running optimally over a year, you'll be able to basically download and upload over 40,000 terabytes of data per year. In order to achieve this kind of capacity, the laser terminals that will be installed on the ground will be something in the order of a 30 centimeter aperture telescope, and will be using a power in the range of around 100 watts that will not weigh much more than 20 kilograms. So this is the kind of infrastructure that will be easy to deploy in nearly any location around the world without having too many limitations. And we will have a network with an availability of the order of around 99%. And the other good advantage of using this kind of technology is, as the technology on the satellites is growing and becoming more advanced, the data rates that we can send on the data links will also become higher as well. And we are not limited by spectrum congestion. And we can imagine a few years later in the future, we can upgrade from 10 gigabit per second links to 100 gigabit per second links and beyond that as well. Finally, I would like to share some success stories of some of the deployments that we have done in Southeast Asia with this technology. One of the first trials that we did was with SK Telecom in South Korea, where we were working with the Telecom Infra project and Facebook to basically bring connectivity to a library which was outside Seoul. This library had a limited data connectivity solution, which provided with 100 megabit per second link. We installed a pair of the Centauri devices on the rooftop of the library and on the rooftop of the closest fiber optic installation nearby, and we're able to increase that data rate by 20 times to a 2 gigabit per second link within 1 day of work. These are some other examples of installations of the Centauri technology in Southeast Asia. Here you can see the Centauri being installed on a few rooftops, and you can see on the left side a picture of how the Centauri device compares with your traditional RF and microwave technology in size and weight. And here are a few other pictures of other installations that we've done in a few countries in the region, both on telecom towers and rooftops as well. And here are a few other of our installations. As you can see, the technology is built to work in the kind of rain and weather environment that we have in the region. And we've even survived a few typhoons as well. That's all from me. I'm looking forward to having a deeper discussion with you guys and answering any questions that you may have. Thank you for the time.
Excellent. So I have a question here posed by Ivan Chandra from the University of the South Pacific. And he would like to ask that you had stated most of the internet is from undersea cables. Would you say that the Starlink project from SpaceX is a good option? Does it solve most of the infrastructure requirement problems?
That is an excellent question. So yes, 99% of the world's data is currently being sent through undersea cables, but unfortunately those undersea cables have limitations in where they can access to geographically. So one of the great things that Starlink is doing is that it's bringing connectivity to a lot of those areas which are geographically very difficult to access, and is bringing that connectivity to those locations. However, in the Starlink project, as ambitious as it is still limited by the spectrum that they're using. They're using the Ka band spectrum, and because of that spectrum that they're using, they're not able to send more than around 100 megabits per second per user. So the problem that will naturally occur is that they will be able to bring really good connectivity to locations which are sparse and don't have very high data rate requirements. But in locations where you have a higher density of people and you need higher data rates, the spectrum will just be naturally limited. So it will solve part of the problem, but not all of the problem.
Excellent. Actually, I have a lot of questions for you, but I'm sure Delsi might have a few questions around this technology. It sounds very useful. Is there an implementation done in Vanuatu?
That is correct, Georgina. I think it's important to do a more of this kind of forum or seminar or webinar, and also invite other, let's say, some service providers or small entrepreneurs to be part of the session so that they're aware of what kind of solutions that are available and that are much more cheaper to address these remote access difficulties.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question too. I agree with Delsi on that point. How is this different from, I think there is another provider in the Pacific called K Pacific or Case, and what is the difference between that technology and yours?
Yes, so there's actually a lot of current satellite providers which are providing connectivity all around the world. All of the technologies are using the microwave band. Some of them are running in places like the C-band technologies, some of them are X-band technologies, some of them, and the most recent ones, are Ka-band technologies. These technologies have some pros and cons to them. For example, if you're running in the C-band, you will have a very high availability link, meaning that if it's rainy or it's cloudy, you still have your data working. However, you will have very limited data rates, things in the order of hundreds of kilobits per second. So if you want to stream YouTube or Netflix, you won't be able to. In addition, they're very expensive. On the other side, you have things like the Ka-band solutions. These are the latest technologies, which are usually VSAT based. They provide tens of megabits per second to some of them, in limited cases, up to hundreds of megabits per second of connectivity as well. However, they are very expensive. And I think Delsi can also touch on that. Some of the numbers that I have is for a 10 megabit per second link, it will cost thousands of dollars per month. Thousands of dollars per month. So you can imagine, and 10 megabits per second is honestly nothing. If you go to a lot of places where they do have fiber optic cables, they pay around 100 times less for 10 times more. So these these are usually used for critical infrastructure needed by the government, by financial institutions, for maritime vessels in the ocean. They're not meant to bring connectivity to the everyday user. So when you look at space-based connectivity at the moment, there is a big gap for the everyday user who needs extremely high bandwidth connectivity. And that's what we are trying to propose here, where these laser communication links are not meant to connect a single person to the internet. They're meant to connect whole cities and islands to the internet. They are like bringing a fiber optic cable from the sky into the city, because it's a much cheaper and more scalable way of connecting those places in the world which have not been connected yet. And once you have that 10 gigabit per second link into that island or into that city, then you can use the much more cheaper and easier ways to distribute data on the ground level. So a single one of these links can suddenly connect thousands of people to the internet at a much lower price point.
Interesting. I think our conversation has struck up a lot of questions, so I'll read out some of the questions. Mr. Suliana Nayangu, he is asking this question: have you done any collaborations with any academic institute or any state for the services that you provide?
Yes, we have a few pilots running for our ground-based technology in Southeast Asia. These pilots are happening mostly with telco companies and ISPs in the region. We also have some other projects that we are doing as well, but we are always looking for new partnerships and for expanding geographically. We are a small company, and this is a technology that we have just recently developed, and we are in the pilot stage. And now we're looking for partners to bring this technology to the real world. And for myself and my co-founder, when we started this company, the most important thing for us is impact. So we want to bring the technology to places in the world where we can see real impact and real improvements in the day-to-day life of people. So we're more than happy to explore potential opportunities that we can bring into the South Pacific area, where we can help with connectivity, especially when it comes to things like educational use cases, for medical use cases, for helping building up the local economies. So these are things that we're really interested in working with. And if there's anyone from the University of South Pacific who's interested in doing a pilot or trial with us, I'm more than happy to have that discussion. I'm more than happy to share my contact that we can take, and we can have that conversation with each other later.
I will get another question from USB. I think they have a question on whether this is a good substitute. And on that note, I'd just like to let everyone know what Mohammed has said is quite a good opportunity to take on. So we're looking forward to you sharing or partnering up with those in the islands. And yes, so he is asking, what would the potential cost be like, and if it is a good substitute for 5G? This is from Ivan Chandra.
Yes. So we are not a substitute for 5G. We are an enabler for 5G. So when it comes to 5G technology, basically 5G requires around a 10 times densification of the number of cell towers that we need in cities to provide that connectivity. If you guys look around you inside the city, you'll definitely see some kind of towers or these rectangular shaped antennas in the city. And these are the places that you're getting your day-to-day 4G or 3G data from. So to enable 5G, we need around 10 times more of these. And every single one of these antennas in the city needs to be connected to a network. And usually this is done through a fiber optic cable. Fiber optic cables take a lot of time and are quite expensive to lay down. This solution that we're proposing is a replacement for these fiber optic cables, which is much cheaper and faster to deploy. So in other words, we're helping get 5G out faster and at a lower cost, but we're not replacing 5G. We're just enabling the infrastructure that will make 5G cheaper and faster to do. And Delsi, by the way, if you have any comments, please add. I don't want to be just talking myself.
No, I think your technology is very excited. I just want to comment and ask whether you had any opportunity partnering with any operators in the Pacific.
It depends what you would define as the Pacific. So we've had some trials in the Philippines, in Malaysia, and in Indonesia, but in most of these trials have been in the mainland areas. We haven't had an opportunity to go to some of the more remote areas where connectivity is more of a important and urgent need. And that's something that we would love to explore with you guys. And where something that I would be really excited and interested to do is to bring connectivity to a community that doesn't have any connectivity, and show that how bringing like something like a 10 gigabit per second link to that community can really change the day-to-day lives and impact what people are doing there. But being a small startup in Singapore, we haven't been able to identify what will be the best place to demonstrate this kind of impact. So that's something that we would love to work with you guys. If you guys can highlight a case study like this, it will be something that we would love to do.
Yeah, that is very exciting, Mohammed, and I really look forward to. And I know there is a forum coming up in September. I'll see if, because I am part of organizing committee, I'll see if we can also touch base and get you on board and do some, speaking there, be one of the speaker. But at the same time, I think it's very important, especially for the Northern Pacific region. I'm talking about the small island states. Like Palau, FSM, Marshall Islands. These are the areas that we really need to, get them on board as well. I know I've been part of the development there, and I know they're struggling with the network as well. And not just in there, I think Solomon Islands is also one of them. And I'm speaking Vanuatu as well. Yes, you've heard that we've rolled out the visa across Vanuatu. But I mentioned in my presentation earlier that one of the main issue, one of the top main issue is the cost that the community cannot, sustain the visa. So these are some of the things that we're trying to find ways as to how to address. But by hearing your presentation is really good. It's a good opportunity that I can, perfectly, touch base and connect you with the institution who's doing the rollout of the Universal Access Service, which is the regulated office for Vanuatu.
Absolutely, we'd love to chat more on that.
And I think you've got an offer from the participants as well. Bulla from USB Research and Innovation Unit, and we are happy to collaborate in terms of academic online learning and hoping to share context. And this is from Suliana Nayango. I think also we might have to go back to that question on what the potential cost is like for your solution. This is coming from Ivan.
Perfect. So just to quickly answer Suliano, yes, we would love to have that conversation. More than happy to share contacts. And for Ivan's question, the cost of setting up a link, so it really depends on the region and location that we're setting that link up. But overall, what I can say is that setting up a link with this technology is nearly an order of magnitude lower in cost than setting up a fiber optic cable between those 2 points. So and especially when you look at the amount of data rate that you get and compare it to the total cost, the cost per bit is extremely low as well. And that's what we think is really disruptive about this technology, is that you may be paying a similar price compared to what you would pay for a normal RF and microwave link, but because we're not limited by the spectrum, you're going to get 10 times or 50 times or 100 times more data rates going through. And that's what's really disruptive here, is that we're bringing down the cost per bit.
Okay. There's a Penny who's also asked the question, how efficient is it compared to fiber optic cables? Why and what are the barriers that hinder the usage of this type of tech?
Yeah, so I would say that in a location that a fiber optic cable is already in place, that is already a really good solution. We can't beat fiber optic cables when they are in place. What we are offering here is a complementary technology where setting fiber optic cables is very expensive or difficult to do. It's a great question about what are the barriers to adoption of the technology. This technology has been around for nearly, I would say, 40 to 50 years. Lasers were invented around more than 5 decades ago in Bell Labs. And what has been the major barrier to adoption has been the cost and reliability of the technology. So what we've done here is that we have built a new generation of laser communication technologies, which has come off a lot of the maturity that has happened in the photonics and electronics industry. Just to give a simple example, if you look at your phones that you're using every single day, the cameras that you have on your phone now are probably more precise than the DSLR cameras that people were buying like maybe 10 years ago. Those cameras would cost, that camera alone, those DSLR high quality cameras would cost a few $1,000s. Now you get a full phone with a camera that's better than that for a few $100s. So that's how much we have made improvements in photonics and sensing technologies. And we're basically leveraging a lot of that. We're leveraging a lot of these improvements. And what we've done is that we've built a new generation of the technology, which we're offering at a much lower price point with much higher reliability. And we're hoping by doing so, we were basically getting away from some of those barriers. And what we're trying to push now is basically adoption in locations which will bring the maximum impact. So we're hoping to basically push this technology out there, have it in the wild, and see it in everyday lives of people.
Well, I think you're making quite an impact here. There's an anonymous attendee who really loves your technology and thinks that it is a life-changing opportunity for rural communities. But the person has a very good question around the maintenance and long-term care, if there's any. And I think that's a valid point there because we've had so many technologies and we just want to know about how to maintain the cost long term.
Yeah, great question. So the way we have designed the technology is for it to be very easy to use and user friendly. So once you set up the device on a pole or on a rooftop, you basically don't need to touch it anymore. We've designed it with a lifetime of at least 3 to 5 years. And we don't expect any special kind of maintenance to happen on the device. It's designed to automatically realign itself and adapt itself to the environment around it. As long as it has power going inside the device, and as long as that mount that it's been installed on is working fine, you wouldn't need to have any additional costs. And it will be basically just yearly checking on, making sure that the wires and the connectivity is all in place, that the mount is not rusting or anything like that's not happening.
That's great. I have a question also for Delsi. There's a question from the audience. They really want to know about your background and what inspired you. Could you speak a bit about that?
Yes, sure. Sorry, I should have started off with that. But anyway, actually, I am the graduate for administration and psychology, psychology being my major. So somehow in the 2008, I was heavily involved with the liberalization of telecommunications here in Vanuatu. And then in 2016, I actually set up the office for the regulator for Vanuatu. In 2016, I took up the position for telecommunications regulator. And I had my turn. And in 2018-19, I was hired by the government of Palau to do the establishment of the regulatory for them. So I'm still working with them at the moment, but at the same time, being part of many of the discussions and meetings and forums at the international level, for example, at the ITU, International Telecommunications Union, at the APNIC, at the UN Internet Governance Forum, and so on. I realized that if we continue to discuss the challenges at the level and not doing anything to assist, to help with the situation, then I think we'll continue to talk. So I stepped back and start a small private organization we call the Pacific Inspiro, and start by making awareness and sort of training at the rural communities, get them to understand, at least it's not just Facebook. If you have access to data, it's not just Facebook. At least you can Google, library and so forth. So that's what we are doing at the moment, but much more focusing on the faith-based organizations, because this is where you will find a lot of youth development. So that's basically what I'm currently doing. At the same time, I have assisted the government of Vanuatu to develop the digital governance roadmap. And sooner or later, I think it's towards the end of this year, we will start the rollout of what we call smart islands. So it's a project that ITU and the government of Vanuatu are keen to roll out. And I have done the design and been to the community to try and find out more information on all of this stuff. And this is where I was so excited, and I'm very pleased to hear Mohammed's presentation and kind of connect with all these situations and the difficulties that these rural communities are facing, and thinking maybe that's one of the solutions.
Oh, you're amazing. You're amazing. I have one question before I go into the two questions for Mohammed. But my question to you, Delsi, would be, what is your advice to the next generation that will come up in your field, that are interested in your field?
So today we should all acknowledge that, digital activities is now a multi-cross sector. Despite whatever, you will actually end up with using ICT activities. So whatever you're doing, get the ICT, factor it into your studies or your daily lives. Even if you cannot or you don't understand, don't give up, because many of the solutions are already online. It's just a matter of asking assistance as to how and who to guide you to get there. That's one. And secondly, if you are really keen to do businesses at this early during your studies, you have the potential to do that. Before, it's difficult. You have to go through and get, certificates and, masters and so forth. But today, you can be a student and at the same time, an entrepreneur. So I wish you all the best.
Excellent. Thank you for that wisdom. I'll come to Mohammed again, and we've got a question here around from Ivan. Since we are talking satellites, what happens to the satellites after they are out of commission? Will they end up as space waste? What if they re-enter Earth? Could we have satellite parts raining down? Please elaborate on materials used for construction.
That is an excellent question. And it's a question that in the past I've had myself as well. And what happens with conscious satellite designs and launches is that there is a decommissioning process. So what happens is that, let's say if the satellite has a lifetime of 5 years, once the satellite reaches the end of its lifetime, there's a process where there is a controlled decommissioning of that satellite. What happens is that the satellite will be slowly pushed to lower and lower orbits. And while it's going to lower orbits, it's moving faster and faster. Just to give you an idea, a satellite that is at around 700 kilometers from Earth is moving at 7 kilometers per second. 7 kilometers per second. So that's extremely fast. So when you're doing the deorbiting process, that satellite is getting closer and closer to Earth while it's orbiting Earth. So it's going to spin faster and faster and faster. And when it's coming into the atmosphere, it's hitting the air particles. So what will naturally happen with a small satellite is it's just going to burn. It's just going to burn and evaporate while that deorbiting process is happening. And for larger satellites where the whole thing may not burn and be evaporated during that process, there is a controlled deorbiting where it will be sent into a place where no one is living in the middle of the ocean. And that will be basically, that's where a lot of bodies of dead satellites exist now. It's not maybe the most ecological friendly way of doing things, but it's at the moment the safest way of doing things instead of having them rain on places where people are living. Yes, so that's how satellites are currently decommissioned.
Oh, wow. That's interesting to know, because the next question is around what are some of the impacts or flaws of this tech, taking into consideration the environment impacts, if any. So yes.
So we just talked about one of the environmental impacts, but if I look at environmental impacts, I will look at maybe two more things which are very important. One is energy usage, and the other one is radiation and its effect on everyday people's lives. When it comes to energy usage, the using lasers is much more efficient than using standard RF and microwave technology. The reason being that laser beams can be focused much more, and hence much less of the power is being wasted to the surrounding place. And that's why we can establish these extremely high bandwidth links over very long distances with power as little as 20 watts. And 20 watts is literally what you would use for a single light bulb. And that's what you would, and you can get 10 gigabit per second data rates with that kind of power usage. So they're much more energy efficient than your standard RF communication systems. So that's one item that I wanted to talk about. The second item, radiation and safety. When it comes to, so one of the questions that people ask me a lot is, what happens if a bird flies through a laser link? And the answer is that nothing will happen to the bird. It will be completely safe, because the amount of power that is being sent through these laser links is very, very little. It's in the order of milliwatts. And if I wanted to explain that a little bit more in everyday terms, that power is, lasers are light. It's basically light in a specific wavelength. And if you look at the amount of power that these laser links are sending back and forth, it's much less than the power that is being radiated on us every day through the sun. So I would say it would not cause a major health concern, as long as, of course, no one is going in front of a device and putting their eyes in front of it. That's, of course, a different story. But when it comes to the general population and the way that these laser links affect the environment around them, I would say they're quite safe, and they are. And people living around them will not be exposed to the radiation. Just to give you an example, with the normal RF or microwave antenna in the city, or the wireless routers that you have in your house, you don't have a lot of control on where that electromagnetic beam is propagating. It's propagating everywhere in the environment around you. However, with a laser beam, the propagation is very well controlled. It's very precise. It's like a pencil beam that goes in a very specific direction. So unless someone goes and stands in the middle of that laser beam, for the people who are living around it, they should not have any negative health impacts at all.
Wow. I have a question also around your background, and the question as well on what inspired you in coming into this field.
Yeah, my background is more from an academic background. I came to Singapore in 2012. I did my PhD here, and when I was studying here, one of the most what I was really excited about and what I really cared about was working on the kind of technology that can really change people's lives and bring an impact to society. During my work as a researcher, I noticed that being in academia, you have the opportunity to explore a lot, but your work is more focused on purely more theoretical and academic concepts, things like writing papers and publishing things. And I wanted to bring technology to the real world. So I decided to move away from after I finished my studies, I moved away a little bit from the academic path. I did a little bit of industrial work, got a degree in management of technology, and joined a startup accelerator program here in Singapore. Met my co-founder, and we started the company. Both of us, we've been really passionate about getting people around the world connected. We both come from backgrounds where we struggled with connectivity in our own lives, and we wanted to be part of the change of improving connectivity for everyone around the world.
did you both share an interest in space
Yes.
technology?
Yeah, both of us were very nerdy. We were very excited about space, lasers, and telecommunications as well. And we were like, okay, this sounds like the perfect solution, and one of the most fun things that we could do.
Because I'm going to raise the question from Ivan again, and this is regarding whether this will hinder stargazing or space observation and future space exploration missions. In addition, because it's light technology, does it have to be in line to the site, to the receiver, or can a brick wall or a tree reduce speed? I think that's the disruptions in case there's a tree or a building in
So
normal technology. Yeah.
another set of really good questions, Ivan. So let me go through them one by one. Part one, which is about stargazing. So this is something that a lot of people are worried about, basically because the satellites that are going in space, they're creating reflections that is making it difficult for people who are doing observations of Earth. What I can say in the case of the satellites that we are building, first of all, we're trying to keep the satellites as small as possible. It's simply because of economical reasons as well. It's just cheaper and easier to build smaller satellites that have a smaller impact on the amount of light they reflect down towards Earth. That's one thing. The second item that I can mention is that the laser beams, the light that they're sending to the ground is very directional. So as long as someone is not in that specific radius, and that radius is a few hundred meters, it should not impact observation work that is happening from areas around that location. So it will have an impact, but as long as we carefully design the locations, not to be close to observatories, and we understand those implications, the impact will be small. And I think to the value that we're bringing to the rest of the world, it's maybe a compromise we should consider, and and it's something to consider and valuable. Um, the other question was about what happens what about do we need line of sight? Yes, with laser communication technology, you definitely need to have a line of sight. If there's anything like a brick wall or even like a leaf of a tree or anything of that sort that blocks the laser beam, you will not be getting your data going through. So that's a very important thing when using this kind of technology, to make sure that you're setting it up in a way that there's not going to be people or cars or vegetation growth or anything like that that will block the link.
I'm going to bring this question home to Fiji. So this question is, can those lasers work in remote islands of Fiji? How about if they only have weak internet on these islands? In Fiji, we've got the bigger, the smaller, and also where I'm from, it's right in the remote area in the middle of the sea. So it'll be interesting to hear your implementation.
Yeah, so I would have two different solutions to these locations. I would first look at the closest, let's say, for example, we're talking about islands in Fiji, right? I will look firstly at the closest point of presence of a fiber optic cable around that location. So if there is a fiber optic cable, let's say something around 5, 10, 20 kilometers away, from that location, my first approach will be trying to expand that connectivity through the point-to-point ground product that we have. That will be much faster to deploy and probably better from a pricing point of view. So with a few hops, we may be able to connect that village or that city or that island to high bandwidth connectivity. So that will be my first approach. However, if it turns out that there is basically no connectivity infrastructure nearby, then the only other solution to use at that point is to use the satellite links and to bring basically one single optical link into a location there where it's geographically has probably the highest population, the highest density, and from there distribute it on the ground to locations around it. So that will be my alternative solution. So honestly, what I can share with you, Georgina, is in a lot of locations, the issue is distribution. There is usually a good fiber optic cable somewhere nearby. And the issue that the end user, the people are not getting good internet connectivity, the speeds are so low, is simply because the distribution network, the access network hasn't reached those locations yet. And that's where I would start first.
Thank you for that. There's a question from the audience for Delsi. This is in regards when you're moving from one Pacific country to another, is it easier to work with people because you have a Pacific culture? I think they're referring to your advisory role in for Palau and how you've been an influencer in the Pacific.
Thank you for the question. This is very good and also an interesting one. Although we kind of have similar culture, but be mindful, we are brought up differently as well. And even the culture of work environment are also different. So to fit in the environment, first of all, you have to know what you're actually doing and understand the people that you're working with, and especially the supervisors, because that's very important. And for example, if my experience with Palau, I know what to do and I know how to handle this and what we're supposed to, discuss at the level of ministerial, for example. But that shouldn't my agenda. I hope you're getting me. And first of all, we have to share with them what is it in that particular function that will bring benefit to the nation as a whole. And that's the game, or that's the way we should operate. Fit in the culture and do your best, and at the same time, accept whatever realities that you're facing and contribute in a professional way.
Excellent advice. Collaboration with each other. Thank you, my sister. I think that there's some more questions coming forward. Okay, just doing a quick check. I think we don't have any questions left yet, but thank you so much. I think Dinesh, when you heard what Delsi had said, do you also have some thoughts around that in your space of work as well in Singapore?
In terms of students who are looking into concerns about living in a different country, adapting to different cultures and these kind of things. In Singapore, I would say it can be a home for anyone. It's a very diverse country here. We have people from all around the world, both from Asia, both from the Western world. So I think Singapore can be a home for anyone, especially if anyone is interested in studying here. The universities, I studied here as well. We had people from all around the world, probably more foreigners than locals when it comes to graduate programs. So wherever in the world you are from, and if you're interested in studying in fields, especially when it comes to engineering, technology, science, these kind of things, Singapore is a great place to study. You would feel very much at home here, very much at ease. It's a very accepting country of all cultures, all different cultures around the world. It's multilingual as well, and everyone also speaks English. So I think for a lot of the young folk there who are looking out for somewhere to study, Singapore can be a great option. And I'm more than happy to give some tips and connect to some of you guys if you have any questions about that from my own experience. You're muted, Georgina.
I think we have a comment from Ivan to share his comment about Fiji, the case in Fiji, that the main island where most of the population density is, there's a submarine cable and decent internet. However, the problem to solve would be how could your technology distribute that high speed to the other 300 something smaller islands where there is no coverage? I think you touched on that earlier, but I guess maybe we can just revisit that so that he can and then we can also ask if you can, after that question, perhaps that would be the last question, then you can give your closing remarks and then we'll move to Delsi for her closing remarks.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ivan, thank you so much for sharing that. I totally agree. This is the scenario that we have in most countries around the world as well, is that there is good internet connectivity. There are good fiber optic cables coming to the mainland and to some of the big major cities. And the issue is then how do we distribute this to smaller cities and islands around them? And the short answer is it really depends. It really depends how far these cities are. And depending on that distance and the geographical situation in between, there would either be a landed way of connecting these 2 points or something, or in some situations, a space solution may be more suitable. And that's something that I would love to chat more with anyone in the audience who is familiar in, for example, in Fiji, on having a look of how the fiber optic cables are distributed there, where are the locations which have maximum density of people who are not connected, and seeing who are the stakeholders there that we can work with to try to demonstrate how we can connect some of these locations through a few pilots and case studies, and through that prove that yes, this is something that we can do within a reasonable amount of cost, and from there look at how we can scale this as well. So Ivan or Delsi or anyone else in the audience who you think we can have a productive conversation about this, more than happy to have a chat with you guys. I think the organizers, I'm more than happy for the organizers to share my contact with you, and we can talk more about this as well. My closing remarks. Thank you everyone for the time today. We have built this technology here, and we're really excited about seeing its impact in the real world. So anyone who has some use cases where our technology can bring impact, please reach out and let's talk about it more. We're really excited to work with you guys and see the technology in the wild bringing impact to people. Thanks, everyone.
Over to you, Delsi.
Thank you, Georgina, and thank you also to the team for Secretariat for organizing this. This is really, really great. I really enjoyed the presentations and the questions. But as a closing remark, I would like to say that in the small island states in Pacific, we lack innovation, we lack innovators. So if the students are listening out there, I think it's very important to start work on that, and also think of the key issues that we are facing. For example, climate change, and the issues that we are facing, the digital illiteracy, and the agricultural products, and all of these, they're very important, and even health, because we live in a remote islands and we have to connect with each other. So if there are innovators around here in the Pacific, in the small island states that understand the situations and come up with solutions that can address our needs to improve digital transformation, that would be really, really great. And once more, thank you very much.
I concur with my two panelists, and thank you everyone in the audience. We ask that you come up as innovators, and thank you for the wonderful sharing on what's happening in Vanuatu, because that digital transformation progress is actually something really great to celebrate. And I thank you also for the technology that's coming out that's very futuristic, and it's something to keep in mind on what we can make use of. So as we continue to learn each day, I thank you also to the audience, to everyone sitting here. I hope you are able to learn from this session and take back with you learning points. And if you have any questions, I'm sure you can direct them to ISA Forum experts that can put you in touch with all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
The Archipelagic and Island States Forum is a platform designed to facilitate 47 archipelagic and island nations to collaborate and cooperate in addressing common challenges in 4 thematic areas: climate change mitigation and adaptation, blue economy, marine plastic debris, and good maritime governance. In 2017, the idea to establish the multinational cooperation framework among the archipelagic and island states was first iterated during the UN Ocean Conference in New York. In November 2018, Indonesia hosted the first ministerial meeting with 21 archipelagic and island states. The Archipelagic and Island States Forum was established by Manando Joint Declaration. In the following year, the second ministerial meeting adopted the final outcome with 25 AIS participating countries. To achieve our vision, we focus on 4 objectives which we translate into our programs. Create an open, innovative, and engaging forum. Provide a space to share and implement innovative and tangible programs. Promote collaborative efforts among stakeholders. And create opportunity through the blue economy. Ideation, implementation, and evaluation are the core elements to our solution framework in addressing the problems. In 2020, AIS Forum launched programs to drive innovation, which are AIS Joint Research, a collaborative applied research program affiliated with academic institutions in AIS countries with various topics related to the 4 areas of collaboration. The Innovator Scholarship Program, a fully funded exchange program for talented individuals from AIS participating countries who can demonstrate exceptional leadership quality and creative mind, and AIS Innovation Challenge, to find innovative ideas and breakthroughs that can help societies and businesses to be more resilient and adaptive during crisis situations. AIS Forum also launched AIS Blue Startup Hub, a platform to connect marine-focused startup in 47 archipelagic and island states across the globe. AIS Blue Startup Hub Mentoring Program was launched with 18 participating startups from 6 countries. As an effort to realize the smart, innovative solutions, AIS Forum also engaged with public audiences through online events in a form of trainings, workshops, talk shows, and discussions with various topics and stakeholders across AIS participating countries. In light of COVID-19 pandemic, it is important for archipelagic and island states to have a resilient economy. Therefore, AIS Forum Secretariat introduces programs which focuses on blue economy. As a form of its commitment, AIS Forum developed Blue Economy Development Index, or BEDI. This index will be used as a tracking tool to determine the current use of coastal and marine resources, and it can be used as a tool to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. Blue Financing Framework, or BFF, which provides a guidance for governments, financial institutions, philanthropists, and donors to align their investments with the blue economy principles and allow them to select a project to be financed in the blue economy sectors. Smart and innovative solution programs, such as sharing knowledge sessions with experts and representatives from AIS participating countries. Plankton, which was a competition to raise awareness in reducing marine plastic debris. Impact pitching, which connects startups, small and medium-sized enterprises, potential investors, and growth enablers to gain partnership. And Ending Plastic Pollution Innovation Challenge, which was a collaboration with Marine Plastic Debris Project from UNDP Indonesia to address marine plastic pollution in Southeast Asia. Many solutions to challenges that affect AIS participating countries in 4 main thematic areas and SDG 14 goals are produced through collaboration programs. These programs will explore opportunities through innovation and experiment that benefits on a local, regional, and international scale through sharing knowledge and experiences between AIS participating countries.